What is going on, Knicks fans? This is Luca here from Knicks Cast. Been a while since I did a video and did some content. I apologize for that. I know I posted an announcement about a month ago or so, or a couple weeks ago, but we'll be back with the content very shortly since the Knicks just started media day and training camps around and all of these different things in parts. So first off, I just want to say thank you guys for all your support. Continue to hit that like button, continue to hit that subscribe button for anybody that's new here. Turn the notification bell so when I go live or drop a new video, all those different things. Share this out, comment down below, give me your thoughts on the Knicks and basketball in general, video suggestions, all that. But first off, I just wanted to provide a life update. So no, I'm not quitting the channel. Love what I'm doing so far, love the growth that we've had in about a year's time. Pledging to be more consistent with my content. I have no distractions now. As of right now, about a month ago, I moved down here to Chattanooga, Tennessee for more job opportunities, hopefully in the media in the future and all of these different things, but it's not going to change how I do my videos. If anything, I'm going to try to do it more consistently, and I know I apologize, I haven't been doing that consistently. Not so much the last month or so, but more so when it was like with the winter, and I remember I took a month off to reevaluate the channel and stuff. But now, once I pump out, obviously we'll be doing live streams, game live streams, season preview, that's going to happen as well. I have to plan that out. But just a lot of things, a lot of moving parts in this current life, living essentially on my own, although I do live with my brother, but living outside New York. Doesn't change, must I say, it doesn't change the way I'm going to view games. I still have MSG on my Fubo, so I'm going to get all the Knicks games possible. Not only just obviously MSG, but ESPN, ABC, Amazon Prime, all these different things, all these different streaming and channels and all that. But starting with the Knicks, and this is going to be my off-season thoughts, just my general thoughts, just to get back into the flow of things. I actually feel genuinely excited about this team, and it's not, gaslighting or any of these hyper emotions, but you could, and this is like, because you see I'm wearing the Just End the Suffering shirt. A friend of mine bought me that because I'm a Jet fan, obviously, and if you guys haven't watched my Jets content, also feel free to subscribe over there as well. But I legitimately feel that the Knicks are the only team that gives me consistent happiness. Now, if you told me that 6 years ago, if I said that 6 years ago, people would call me crazy because, the Jets were still bad. The Knicks were, with David Fizdale, they were horrible. They were a rudderless ship. I mean, the Yankees obviously try to contend for a championship year in and year out, but it's been the same mess despite them right now being in a divisional race regardless. But it feels for once that this franchise actually has a plan. And I know, people say that a lot, but moving forward, let's go off the back of last year, right? The Knicks trade for Karl-Anthony Towns, the trade for Mikal Bridges, big expectations, Tom Thibodeau, freshly off an extension. And they make the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time in my lifetime since 2000. Me being 22 years old, I wasn't around for such success, or couldn't even celebrate it, rather. But heading into the offseason, I said on I believe it was the offseason live stream, or it might have been the Game 6 live stream when the Knicks were getting blown out. I said the Knicks had to make a big decision. I said they could do this one of two ways, or maybe even three. I said the Knicks can either keep Tom Thibodeau, build the roster around his play style and what he likes. Number two, they could fire Tom Thibodeau and bring in a new coach and keep most of the contingent roster, the contingency of players, the core. Or number three, we can hire a new coach and we could trade like a guy like Karl-Anthony Towns, maybe be in the Kevin Durant sweepstakes. Well, looks like the Knicks went with option number two, and I thought that was the best out of all of them. So let's go back to the Tom Thibodeau thing. People in the media are still unhappy that Tom Thibodeau got fired. I saw Frank Isola posting some tweet that, it was about Deuce McBride's comments essentially saying that this offense will be having more ball movement, player movement, faster pace, all these different modern concepts and little things that, and philosophies that go along with a modern offense. Less stagnation. That's what Deuce said. I think that was the most important thing he said. And he also talked about Tom Thibodeau. He's a great coach. He was great for me, great for the team, all that. But he ended off by saying Mike Brown lets the players talk. So obviously there wasn't some open communication in the Tom Thibodeau era as much as many thought. But Frank Isola's tweet essentially said, well, the Knicks were third in history, third in their franchise history in assists last year. Well, if you look at the games, first of all, that is a sharp contradiction. Also, as well, you look at the great teams. You want to go back to the 90s. Those teams were very much built on their defense, their rugged defense. They were never about, pace and space or fast passing or transition or all these different, like these modern concepts. They were never built to be a modern offense in the 90s. It was a very rugged defensive team. Patrick Ewing was obviously the head honcho of those teams, but that's obviously a flawed argument. You had Michael Kay saying the other day on ESPN Radio, on his radio show, he's like, what New York franchise gives you the most bang for your buck? He talked about the Jets and Giants being up and down every year. The Jets mostly down, the Giants up and down. He brought up the Yankees, which was very apropos, which is not surprising considering who he is and who he works for. They do the most in his opinion. And then again, go back to the old sports radio talking point. Well, Knicks, they were on the fast track, but they fired the coach, which obviously to the sports common fan, casual fan, sports radio host, they wouldn't understand. And this is like not a sharp knock. It's just they don't know the ins and outs, the X's and O's, to say, hey, maybe Tom Thibodeau being fired was the right move in the sense of he didn't adapt to personnel. Like those different things you can watch in a game. Like it's great to absorb, a great record the Knicks had. I think they had one more win than the previous year. I think that drove a lot of fans. I'm not going to say drove a lot of fans insane, but it also was like, they upgraded. They were supposed to upgrade with Bridges and Towns. They only got one more win. Some of that was coaching. And obviously they fired Tom Thibodeau. Some fans were not happy with the coaching process in terms of the search. I was 50-50. I'm like, okay, we'll see how this goes, how long this extends for. You can't have this go right into free agency because the coach needs a plan. So the Knicks look at all these different coaches. The one coach from South Carolina, I forget her name. I think it's Dawn Staley, if I'm not mistaken. They had interviewed Mike Brown. They interviewed Taylor Jenkins, all these different guys. They eventually landed on Mike Brown. And I formally believe that, first of all, Mike Brown, I think, is a very good coach. I think he's very detail-oriented. I think when he explains himself, I think he just makes you smarter. When you listen to him talk about X's and O's, like, wow, this guy really knows what he's talking about. And that's not a shot at Tibbs. It's just he articulates himself very well. And obviously in a New York market where you have to explain different things and being in front of the media, explaining your game plan, not that you have to explain your game plan every X's and O, but what you want to run, what's your philosophy, and Mike Brown has been phenomenal with that. Even when he wasn't with the Knicks, when he was with Sacramento, I remember me and Donald were doing the stream, and we were watching a video of Mike Brown breaking down like a simple play or a simple concept. It was against the Jazz. There was one play against the Clippers. It was phenomenal, and he's a very detail-oriented coach. And to me, and I'll repeat this several times over, not so much in this video, but I thought about this recently, and despite, Mike Brown's fall off in Sacramento, was it totally his fault? No. Was some of it his fault? Of course. You had Sacramento essentially didn't change the roster after year one. Year one, they made the playoffs. Year two, they were a play-in team. Year three, they, for some reason, decided to sign DeMar DeRozan, which did not click with Mike Brown's system. Then they fired Mike Brown, traded De'Aaron Fox, and now traded for Zach LaVine, which you're pairing a very mediocre duo, which didn't work in Chicago. Why would you think it was going to work in Sacramento? Now you have obviously in Sacramento a very new coach in Doug Christie. He was the interim coach after Mike Brown got fired. Mike Woodson's actually the associate head coach, but rather, I think what Mike Brown, his strengths, I think what Mike Brown let me rephrase that. What Mike Brown can do with this team, his abilities and his strengths will bring the far best out of the team than his flaws to worsen the team. Pace and space, offense first. And it's interesting because people are also analyzing, who is going to be the fifth guy in the starting lineup. Your main contingent for is Brunson, Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, and Karl Anthony Towns. Who's that fifth guy? Is that Deuce McBride or is that Mitchell Robinson? I think there's a viable argument for both. You had Mike Brown explaining that Mitchell Robinson is such an asset, great at grabbing offensive rebounds, great at grabbing at rebounds. his vertical ability, his ability to catch lobs. And then he was talking, I don't know if he spoke specifically about Deuce McBride, but he mentioned his philosophy, which was transition, threes, speed, pace, and that's Deuce McBride. That's what Deuce McBride would succeed in, being in the starting lineup. And there, as I said, there's a viable argument for both. With Mitchell Robinson, you get twice as many rebounds with Karl Anthony Towns. Towns and Mitch, you get a little more also defensive security. Also, as well, you can play more aggressive coverages. But I think also one of the downsides is there's two things. Number one, Mitchell Robinson doesn't space the floor. He does vertically space the floor when he's at the rim or by the basket, in which he can catch lobs and stuff and grab those offensive rebounds. But in terms of what Mike Brown was talking about, and Cat being a potential hub for this offense, you need that to be a 5-out system. And Deuce McBride can space the floor. He could shoot the three. It'll be interesting. I'll say this for the record as well. A lot of the concerns from people in the offseason, I shouldn't say in the offseason, it was for some people, including myself, is like, who's that secondary ball handler that's going to be next to Jalen Brunson? Josh Hart's likely not going to be the starting lineup. Currently has a splint on his finger, if you guys didn't see that already. He's not going to get the surgery as of yet, but it's just somewhat mild concern for me. But regardless, just seeing this new offense and all these different things, the Knicks, it's going to be very, very interesting to see how they handle a secondary playmaker, or a secondary ball handler, rather. Is that going to be Mikal Bridges getting more touches this year? Is that Deuce McBride getting more touches? Because Deuce McBride is very much good as an off-ball guard. He's not very good as an on-ball guard. You saw moments last year, even the year prior, where Deuce McBride would the team would struggle with Jalen Brunson off the floor. Like Deuce McBride, yes, he played with Cameron Payne, and Payne was erratic, but Deuce McBride doesn't strike me as a point guard. Never. I'm not gonna say he never has, because he played point guard in West Virginia, but he never strikes me like he has this great pass vision, or he has I'm not gonna say he has a low basketball IQ. He doesn't. I think he's very smart. I think he's a very good point of attack defender. I think he's great at screen navigation, arguably the best on the Knicks squad, which is why you pair him next to Jalen Brunson. Yes, people argue, well, he's undersized. But that physicality, once again, three-point shooting, and screen navigation, and you're taking less pressure. You're taking more pressure off of Mikal Bridges. You're evening it out. Because Mikal Bridges, if you guys didn't see the stat, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you did, Mikal Bridges had the most miles on him his last year with the Knicks across the NBA. Whether it was him, it was just in terms of traveling, but maybe that's why Mikal Bridges partly didn't play well last year. And I'm not going to excuse his three-point shooting or his lack thereof screen navigation or bad screen navigation. But with Mikal Bridges floating to the wings, playing the best or defending the best wing player, as opposed to trying to both defend guards and wings, I think he's going to have a more successful season. I think Bridges is going to have a more successful season overall with Mike Brown, because Mike Brown, A, is a more communicative head coach, and B, Mike Brown's going to have a system where he's going to have guys playing off the ball, where it's not going to be such a system as, okay, Jalen Brunson or Karl Anthony Towns are just going to ice on you guys, are just going to stand there. No, there's going to be players moving around. There's going to be players being put in the right position to succeed. And once again, I think Mike Brown's strengths suit this team better, as opposed to his flaws, where they're going to be the downfall of this team. So at the end of the day, I think Deuce McBride, in my personal opinion, should be that starting two guard and be that fifth man. I would not be opposed to Mitchell Robinson. I think there's good sides for both. And obviously as well, Mitchell Robinson said in the press conference, he said he doesn't know if he's going to play back-to-backs. And Mitchell Robinson with his injury history as well. Like, you could argue for the back half of last season, he lasted throughout all the playoffs. Last year was one of his more healthier seasons once he came back. There were times where he didn't play those back-to-backs, and I don't think that's going to be the case this year, where, maybe against lesser opponents, you could see Ariel Hukporti be that backup center, should I say. And it's not a huge deal. Maybe there's nights where, Mitchell Robinson isn't starting, depending on matchup. Let's just say the Knicks go 5 out, and Mitchell Robinson's off the bench as the backup center. That's completely fine. And as I said, regards to the Mike Brown stream, when we were doing that, I said, whether you start, let's just say you start the starting 5 as the all 5 out lineup. That's not going to, that to me, that doesn't diminish any sort of scenario where you could play Mitchell Robinson in your starting five alongside Karl-Anthony Towns as your four. Or vice versa, where you can have Mitchell Robinson, Karl-Anthony Towns as your starting front court, and there's a scenario where you play Karl-Anthony Towns some 5 minutes. I think it's very interchangeable, and I think with a very fluid coach like Mike Brown, a very fluid coach, I think you, with somebody who's very innovative and susceptible to making good adjustments, I think with Mike Brown, you're going to see a little bit of both. And that's, I think, with Tom Thibodeau, I think that was one of his biggest flaws last year, where it wasn't interchangeable, where he was very stubborn. And there would be times where, Karl-Anthony Towns and Mitchell Robinson were making a positive impact on the floor, and they were just not playing enough. And you guys remember last year, Thibodeau waited till Game 3 of that Pacers series to finally switch up that starting lineup. And I think Mike Brown is also going to be very collaborative with the front office. If the front office says, hey, this is not working, Tom Thibodeau would say, okay, let's revisit that starting lineup scenario last year, right? Knicks are up 2-0 against the Celtics. And front office, I think they apparently told Thibodeau that the starting lineup wasn't working, or they advised him to change it. Thibodeau said no. Mike Brown, I think, would be the coach to say, okay, we were down 20 points. Let's not make that happen again. Tom Thibodeau would be like, okay, but we're up 2-0. That doesn't matter. And I was debating with some fans last year around this time, like, hey, this starting lineup doesn't work. And it wasn't just me saying, it was a common notion by the fans, and it was backed up by statistics. You look at the on-off numbers. You look at the spacing on the floor, watching the film, how opposing defenses would adjust to Josh Hart just being on the perimeter and just the defense crowding the paint because Josh Hart could not shoot the three ball consistently. So Mike Brown's going to be collaborative. He's going to be more communicative. He's going to communicate with his players. He's going to let them have a voice. And none of this is a shot at Tom Thibodeau, but I think they're just different personalities of coach. Mike Brown, I'm not going to say is more relaxed. I think he could be a bit of a hard ass, especially with the details and the detail-oriented approach that he takes. But I think you'll see a little more, I should say less tenseness in the locker room this year. I think you're going to see a little more fun, a little more chemistry, all of that. And I think another thing, too, with the two additions of Guerschon Yabusele and Jordan Clarkson, I think the Knicks are going to have that moxie that they lacked last year. A lot of the times last year, this team was called soft. I called them soft at the end of the year. Basically, they just laid down and died in Game 6 against the Pacers in the second half of that game. Last year you had the Draymond Green, Karl-Anthony Towns incident. Towns, after the game, walked off the floor, didn't say anything to Draymond Green. Meanwhile, you had Knicks teammates not sticking up for Towns, which I thought was screwed up. But I think you'll have a little bit of moxie off the bench, and this team needs toughness. I think Mitchell Robinson's a tough player. I think Yabusele's a tough player. I think he has that grit. I think Clarkson has that tough mindset, very gritty mindset. It's going to be a fun year. It's going to be a fun year whether you look at it or not. And I think this team, which some people have stressed, and I completely understand it, I think this team is going to take a little bit time to mold, not so much on the aspect of personnel, but I think in terms of a system, because obviously one system was ISO ball, watch Jalen Brunson cook, and just wait for your time. But this offense is going to be about making the right reads, passing up good shots for greater shots, ball movements, screens, cuts to the basket, getting three-point shots open, getting as much three-point shots, paint touches, all that, spray threes, as Mike Brown has continued to point out. But I legitimately, the full synopsis, or in summation, I think this is going to be a fun year for the Knicks. I think this is a year undoubtedly with probably the highest expectations as a fan, being that they just fired their coach, and Mike Brown obviously just came over from Sacramento, was recently fired. Regardless of that, you put all your eggs in the basket. You're fully up against the second apron right now. You're over the second apron actually by extending Mikal Bridges and signing guys like Malcolm Brogdon, Landry Shamet, Jordan Clarkson, Yabusele. And obviously it'll be interesting to see who the Knicks move to free up those roster spots, or the roster spot for Malcolm Brogdon or Landry Shamet. I think personally it's going to be Tyler Kolek. Kolek was seen to be a ready player last year, an NBA ready player where he could contribute immediately. I think he's gone. I think there's a logjam in the backcourt, but I think also you have to forego the love for Tyler Kolek and the rookie love and all these different things, the love with the draft picks. You got to win now. This is a championship year. This is arguably a finals or bust year. So it's going to be interesting to see how these things move. I think the Knicks play their first preseason game in Abu Dhabi. I think it's the 2nd of October. I believe that's a Thursday. But I'm going to keep it here with you guys with the content. I just wanted to provide a life update and my thoughts on the Knicks offseason. I think they did very well with the coach, some of these new assistants who are preaching the same mentality as Mike Brown, Clarkson, Brogdon, Yabusele. I think this is going to be a fun team this year. And with the East wide open, there's no reason the Knicks shouldn't be number one in the East. With that being said, if you guys haven't already, hit the like button, subscribe, turn on the notification bell. Sorry if you had that motorcycle. Turn on the notification bell so you know when I go live or drop a new video. Comment down below. Share this out. Let's go Knicks. It's going to be a fun season ahead. I'll keep you all updated with the content. Catch y'all later.